Okay, so today is Friday, September 5th. It's the beginning of fall, and we are filming another episode of our lucrative legal YouTube channel, blog post, whatever you want to call it, where we discuss everything that we do on a daily basis to help our clients obtain better cases through marketing. Now, at Legal Leads Group, we are a full service ad agency, so we do digital marketing, we do traditional marketing. So we'll do Google Ads, LSAs, organic SEO, social media. We also do television and radio and billboards and streaming. But for the purpose of today's video, we're going to be discussing personal injury attorney marketing and specifically Google Ads. Google Ads, in our opinion, is the best way that a law firm can acquire cases on a digital level. And Google Ads for accident lawyers, in our opinion as well, is the 800-pound gorilla slash holy grail of Google Ad management. If you can manage an effective cost per acquisition for personal injury attorneys and you can bring them the types of cases that they want within their range, you really can hit a home run on all other types of law ad campaigns. That's how aggressive and competitive personal injury attorney Google Ads are. There are a couple different methodologies and thought processes on how you can run Google Ads for a personal injury attorney. And we're going to talk about both those today. Let me introduce Nathan Unger. He's one of our lead Google Ads strategists. He loves everything about Google Ads. Nathan, why don't you go to introduce yourselves and give the audience a quick synopsis on your background?
Yeah, so I've been a media buyer for over a decade, and I've worked in many different niches, whether it's a marketplace like Amazon, social media, lead generation, e-com, etc. And I love all things strategy, pulling together all of those different strategies from different niches, kind of taking what you can and pulling those into legal has been a fascinating and wonderful experience. And yeah, love to talk about more of the details of what we do here on our legal leads strategy.
Cool. So what we're going to start with is just kind of walking through the new blog that we are going to be publishing today. It's not up yet. So the title of the blog is Utilizing Rules and Scripts for Maximum Control over Google Ad Spend for Personal Injury Lawyers. It's a mouthful. Let me explain, and then I'm going to turn it over to Nathan. There are probably a dozen or more different baseline strategies that you can utilize to run Google Ads. The two primary strategies that we run here at LLG are quickly scaling and aggressive spends, and then conservative, more controlled spends. Both have pros, both have cons. It comes down to the appetite of the law firm and where they're at and what they want. Primary example, if you're a very, very large PI firm and you're looking for just maximum caseload and you're okay with a cost per acquisition of, let's say, five, six, $7,000 for a quality motor vehicle accident in your market, and you happen to be in a state that's more, well, I'm going to say, friendly to PI attorneys, an aggressive ad spend is probably the way to go, especially if you're in a competitive market with, say, $200, $300, $400,000 in budget. If you're not in the financial position to spend two, three, 400, you may want to consider a more controlled spend. You will not realistically get the fast results you want, but you'll have the ability to better fine tune your spend. Nathan is gonna dive into that real quick. I'm gonna change it forward to him and ask him some questions. So Nathan, obviously at LOG we have multiple different types of PI firms. And in my opinion, what sets the stage for where the PI attorney fits is really their budget. It's their budget and their want and desire, because they can have the desire for 30 cases, but if they don't have the budget, we can't hit the mark. Okay. And then there are some law firms that do have the budget to spend, but they just want a more restricted flow. So
Exactly.
tell me, in your opinion, where you think all this fits and what your strategy is for using rules and scripts to maximize control.
So with rules and scripts, one of the biggest benefits you can get out of it is, yes, the controlled spend and kind of creating a system in which you're getting exposed to auctions throughout the month. You're really kind of controlling the daily spend the way that you can get the biggest bang for your buck. One of the other elements of creating rules and why it can be so useful is in this niche, there aren't necessarily a lot of signals to determine whether or not somebody's been in a car accident or not. And so when you create these rules, you can get yourself in a particular level of the auction and how much you're willing to spend at max and how much you're willing to spend at the lower end. And that can really help you kind of get exposed to the correct level of signal to conversion ratio. And that's one of the biggest benefits if you're on a smaller budget or in a smaller market. You can get much more of that manual control that can conserve your budget and make you the most efficient and lean.
Okay, so let me kind of reiterate that, make sure I understand it so the audience understands it, because obviously you're extremely educated on this. What you're saying in essence is that if you're running like an e-commerce website where you're selling sunglasses or hats, there's a lot of data signals because those buyers are buying over and over again. But in personal injury, it's pretty much a one pop. And because of that, there's not a lot of signals to identify what an actual car accident client looks like. The only real way to determine a good case or a bad case is by putting rules in. So let's say, for example, you say, okay, I'll grade a call greater than 60 seconds, but less than 120, worth $500 if it comes from a general PI campaign, because a general PI campaign is a mixed bag. It could be wrongful death, it could be med mal, it could be an MVA, it could be premises liability. But a call that's greater than 60 seconds but less than 120 from a MVA campaign, I may rate at $700. And then a call that is greater than 60, less than 120, that comes from a specific commercial truck accident campaign, I may rate at $1,000. By putting in some of those rules, we're trying to help Google understand what we want and setting a foundation for, hey, I need better ad position to get better authority, better value clicks, so that Google thinks it can eat more money. Kind of what you're saying?
Yes, there's so many layers to it of how you can set it up and what you want to designate as value or non-value. And that's where that lack of signals compared to, e-com, you have to create a more intricate system on the back end of how you evaluate the different conversion events for this legal leads niche. And that's where, our strategies get much, much more complex. And we've developed these two different strategies at the company.
Perfect. Okay. So let's go ahead and take a minute and just kind of run through the blog briefly and then touch on these topics. So we're actually going to provide 10 tips. And whether you're a personal injury lawyer, you work in a law firm, you're another ad agency, you're just a solo practitioner trying to help a lawyer, uh, you can walk through today's blog and hopefully obtain clear data to utilize for your campaign. So we're going to give you 10 tips to control spend and maximize ROI for accident injury attorneys. Step one is set clear campaign goals. Touch on that real quick.
Yeah, so your campaign goals, whether you're trying to have a sale, a lead, or no conversion goal, as if you have that in mind, that is going to be much more manual, much more difficult for you to delineate between how the algorithm is going to work for you or against you. So really, when you want to start off, most people will tell you to start with a lead. However, that can be kind of counterintuitive in this niche because if you're trying to create leads and you have very limited signals for what qualifies as a lead, especially on a new account, you can run into a lot of issues where your spend can be really high on certain clicks or it can be really low and you're not really sure where you're at as far as on the auction scale. And that can make the legalese niche particularly difficult to navigate. So that's one of the important aspects of what we like to do here is segment and test specifics on how we go about doing it, particularly for every single niche, whether it's trucks accidents or slip and fall car accidents. We approach it many different ways each time.
Okay. The next section here talks more about implementing conversion tracking. And I know this is a big one because we're always talking about feeding information back. For those of you who are a new watcher or a new reader to our blogs, one of the other niches that we have at Legal Leads Group is we have full intake teams. So in English and Spanish, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If the law firm authorizes it and chooses to utilize us for it, we answer your phone calls and form fills. We're qualifying and disqualifying your cases. That gives us a ton of data to feed back to Google Ads, but you have to set up conversion correctly. So go ahead and touch on that real fast.
Yeah, so really what we like to do here is have the intake be designated on an array of segmentations, whether it's a opportunity, a conversion, what type of conversion is it, call length variations, whether it's a non-qualified lead or an irrelevant call. We like to do that, and that really helps us feedback into our first party data on the back end on where to optimize, where to allocate budget more to, and how to actually alter our conversion events themselves in accordance to the data we're getting back. And that's one of the biggest assets at the company that helps us optimize.
Okay. The third tip that we wanted to bring up, leverage negative keywords. And so, again, I want to believe that most of you out there understand what negative keywords are. If you don't, I'm going to have Nathan touch on it real quick. And Nathan, if you can't touch on negative keywords, and I want you to touch on how you got to be careful too, where, if you add the word injury, sometimes it could knock out the whole, or it's not injury, but if you add a negative keyword that has to deal with injury, sometimes adding a negative keyword, while it seems like a good idea, could actually hurt the campaign. So explain all that.
Yeah, sure. So negative keywords are essentially eliminations that you tell Google to remove from auctions. So if you try to put, say, injury as a negative, it will be a massive difference if it's exact injury or phrase injury or broad injury, meaning that if it's exact, it's just the word injury itself. Phrase might mean personal injury or, injury accidents. And then broad could be even further, like personal injury accident, Las Vegas, for example. And that can create a lot of kind of like double binds where you need to be very careful about when you add these, how you add them, and more specifically about eliminating correctly what you don't want, but also trying to put forth more of what you do want in your budgets. So it's an essential component. It's very easy, I think, conceptually to understand, but it does require a lot of upkeep in this niche, basically a consistent daily overlook on it and maintenance.
One of the things that you guys want to be careful of when you're adding negative keywords, and I'll give you an example, is let's say you add the word medical malpractice attorneys. 99% of our PI lawyers don't want med mal, but you'd be better off adding the keyword medical malpractice than medical malpractice attorney. Because if you add the phrase medical malpractice attorney as a negative keyword and you tag it incorrectly, you could actually negative out the word attorney, which is going to screw up somebody putting in the word personal injury attorney. Or let's say you're adding a negative keyword for your competitor and it says John Smith personal injury attorneys. And so you put that as a negative keyword because that's the name of their law firm. Well, you may have just added personal injury attorneys to your negative keyword list if you don't do it correctly. So that's where negative keywords are phenomenal. They're 100% necessary, but it's not as simple as just adding them. You have to add them correctly. Okay. Let's get to the next section. Focus on Google quality score. So I'm going to pass it to Nathan, but I want to touch on this real quick. This, in my opinion, I think is the holy grail of PPC for search ads. Google quality score can directly impact your cost per click. It can directly impact your impression share. And I believe Google quality score, the foundation of Google quality score starts with quality organic SEO. Nathan, take it away.
Yeah, so quality score is essentially an amalgam of different variables, but you want to make sure that your keyword to the ad copy to then the landing page experience is all very unified, and that landing page itself is highly converting. Those are the biggest components that will keep your quality score high. And the other aspect about this is, again, very strategic. If your quality score is high and you're only in a few auctions, it's much easier to maintain high. But the more auctions that you're in, the more likelihood that you are to not get a click on an ad, which could potentially hurt your quality score. So there's definitely a balance that you want to achieve with maintaining a high click-through rate on the ads and the auctions that you're in, more so than trying to always be in all of the auctions, because that can lower your quality score, which then inadvertently raises that CPC. So even though you may be getting exposed to higher quality auctions, there's definitely a balance that you want to achieve. So there's a cost benefit analysis you need to go through on the back end to prefer how much you want to push and how much you want to pull back.
There's definitely a consistent tug of war on almost every element of Google Ads. Okay, there's a give and a take, a cause and effect. So keep that in mind when you're managing your quality score. The next section we're going to get to is going to be when and how to use automated ad rules. And we like to do things on a manual level because we like to have full control. Okay, platforms like Search Ads 360s let you bid live, but there is something to be said for some automatic rules. But again, it's that give and take. It's that cause and effect, the pro and the con. It's knowing when to use them, when to use them, and when not to use them. Go ahead, Nathan.
Yeah, so exactly what you said. Rules can be one of the best benefits to your campaign, especially if you have unique elements to it. For example, in the PI niche, there's a lot of activity at certain times, there's certain activity or low activity at other times. And so when you're operating kind of lean, maybe you want to preserve certain spend at certain times of the day and lower it, say, in the middle of the night. Rules can help with that a lot. That's one, massive, easy way to kind of get your feet wet into that strategy. And then also the elements of maintaining quality score. Because if you are competing in lower end clicks or poor auctions and getting those clicks, you're likely not going to convert. So although you are competitive on those lower clicks, because you're not converting those clicks, your quality score will actually be lowered. And it can be something that is not really that visible right away, because getting a high click-through rate is usually seen as positive. However, if you're not converting or those conversions are actually poor quality, that can be a problem. So creating rules to hedge against that is one of the biggest elements of our strategy here at the company.
Today's article goes super deep. We finished the article. We haven't published the graphics yet, but it gets into additional elements. It talks briefly on, not briefly actually, it's on optimize for mobile traffic. It gets into additional tips such as test and adjust, optimize. A/B testing is crucial, and then obviously gets into schedule weekly performance reviews. One of the things that I want to touch on too is, while this article is about how to essentially over optimize, there are also alternatives to over optimizing campaigns. And this is where, whether you use our company, another company, you do it yourself, the onus is back on the law firm. Regardless of what any agency tells you or we tell you, you cannot have your cake and eat it too. You cannot have the best of both worlds. There is always a cause and effect. There is always a pro and a con. There is always a risk versus reward. So let me explain in terms of these two pillars, because when you peel the layers of the onion back at Legal Leads, we really believe there are two pillars with your Google Ads: slow and steady or swing for the fence. Okay? If you have a good big budget and you have the ability to just finance the campaign, suck it up, and go, The aggressive spend allows you to get it to spend faster. With Google, unfortunately, everything still comes down to spend. In order to teach it, you have to get it to spend money. Agreed or not? Do you not agree, Nathan?
Yeah, there's definitely a component of that. You have to get information into the machine learning in order to get feedback on what to do. And unfortunately, in this niche, the cost per click tends to be some of the highest I've ever seen. So that limited information that you get back is really crucial to make, the best strategic choices. So it's definitely a challenge, and the more spend you have, the faster that learning can happen.
So let me reiterate that for those of you out there who are considering a PI campaign on Google Ads or who are currently engaged in one and you're like, this is horrible. In our opinion, there are two pillars. There's swing for the fence or slow and steady. If you have the financial wherewithal and you have the stomach and stamina to suck it up, an aggressive ad campaign allows you to get Google to spend money faster. And what that does is allows you to have three basically phases of Google Ads. Spend a lot of money to get conversions, optimize those for conversions, move them into leads, optimize those leads, move into ROAS, move into return on ad spend. If you have the budget and you have the stamina, that aggressive spend is like steroids for your ad campaign. You can push the needle faster, you can bring in higher volume, and in theory, in turn, if it's managed correctly, you can bring in a higher caliber case at a much quicker pace, at a much bigger volume. So the aggressive spend works, but you're gonna spend five, six, seven, $8,000 per case for an MVA in the very beginning. And then what you're saying is, okay, I opened up the funnel. The thought process is this: you open up the funnel quickly, you spend more money than you want to. So you're getting quality cases, but it's six, seven, 8,000 a case, 5,000 a case if you're lucky. And then you see, okay, now that I have my cases, now that I have my volume, now I want to teach Google my actual desired CPA, and I want to trim the fat. So it's like building a big statue. I'm gonna sculpt a big statue. I'm gonna dump a bunch of clay and I'm gonna chisel it away. That is an aggressive ad spend. And so you take that $8,000 CPA and you whittle it down to seven, and then you whittle it down to six, and then you whittle it down to five, and you whittle it down to four. In this aspect, you spend a lot to whittle it down, but you get cases right away. The alternative is what today's blog is about. You might not have that ability, so you can't have your cake and eat it too. In the reverse or the inverse, however you want to say it, you have to put a whole bunch of rules and scripts in so you don't get the fat. You don't get that big spend. You don't get the big spend, but you also don't get the cases right away. It's going to take time for Google to understand all these rules and scripts so it learns how to place you into auctions. So you might not have that big Google ad spend month one, month two, month three, but you still might be paying a marketing agency to manage that for you and manage those rules and that data. And what you're saying is, okay, I don't want to blow 50, 60, 70, 100 grand a month on Google Ads. I'm okay around the 20 mark for PI, which is nothing, honestly. It's a very limited budget. But because I only have 20, 30 grand for Google Ads, I have to train it over time. So I'm going to take the slow and steady path. Does that make sense, Nathan?
Yeah, 100%. The elements of trying to start slow and keep it very contained. You can get a lot of learning in there. However, if we can find a little bit more of a longer runway to get to the point to where you're kind of locked in on trying to acquire cases at, whatever your target CPA is of, maybe 5,000, get that sweet spot where you can feel like you have that control, and then you can kind of modify or expand a little bit more on what types of keywords you're going for. And really the elements of bid adjustments and rules can keep that honed in so tight that you feel that every dollar you're spending is well spent. And that can be incredibly useful for new clients that have more of a limited budget, because that is often going to be the case. So you want to be able to get them good results or proof of concept initially, and then maybe open things up as you go from there. But really, it's kind of like a minimum viable service model that we want to prove and then move forward from there. So really like that strategy if you're on a limited budget.
As always, all of the information, tips, and advice that we provide here, it's our opinion. Do your own research. Don't just blindly trust us. These are truly the tactics that we utilize to help our clients get cases. And we have firms that don't have big budgets. We have firms that have big budgets. And there's pros and cons to both. At the end of the day, it comes down to your firm's appetite, your financial wherewithal, your wants and your needs, and your risk tolerance. If you have more questions, you can always call us, dial 805-273-8791, 805-273-8791, or you can visit our website at www.lucrativelegal.com. All of our campaign consultants, all of our Google Ad reps, we're all in-house. We're all here in Westlake Village, California, or in Dallas, Texas. You can reach us Monday through Friday from 8 to 5, or even on the weekend if you want to. We're more than happy to jump on a Zoom with you, meet you in person, go over your campaigns. If you are a personal injury lawyer and you're looking to get cases and you're not using an agency, give us a call. Nathan and I and our whole team are here to help you. Take care. Have a good day.